to Washington now, and Kevin McCarthy is, as you know, out as Speaker of the House. Business in the House is now effectively paralyzed until a new Speaker is elected, which won't be until maybe another week from now. With me now is Republican pollster Frank Luntz. Frank, I know that you are a longtime friend of Kevin McCarthy's. Have you spoken with him tonight? What do you make of what unfolded today in the House?
I spoke to him just before the vote, and he was pretty seriously concerned about the outcome. I think that this reminds me of George Orwell in 1984. The people who tell the truth are accused of being liars, and the liars are thought to be telling the truth. And it's a sad day for my friend, but I look at the country, and and I'm here right now in London, and the challenges that are happening with their government and the challenges to other democracies. It seems like we are becoming more and more extreme. We are ignoring the wishes of the American people. And I want to emphasize this to everyone who's watching right now. The American people wanted the government open. They want to end wasteful Washington spending. They want a more efficient and more effective government, but they wanted it open. They wanted it to work. The Speaker of the House did exactly to the letter what the public wished of him, and yet he lost his vote. He lost his job.
Do you think that McCarthy should have cut a deal with the other side, created a bipartisan path forward? Is that what the American people would have wanted to see?
The public wants the job to be done, and they wanted the government open. And it's not an issue I keep hearing this phrase, cutting a job with the other side. We're on the same side. Those are members of Congress. Whether you agree or disagree with them on a majority of issues, we have become so divided that we see it as us versus them. And I think that that's the greatest tragedy of all. And I wonder just how chaotic things have to get before they stop playing this way.
Yeah,
These are political games. And I remind you, the person who brought this up is under, and we can't talk about it. I don't even know what the exact charges are, but Matt Gaetz is he's been charged by the Ethics Committee for improper, and from what I hear, awful behavior. And now he gets rewarded. These 8 members who are following someone who maybe, from what I hear, could be removed by the House for just ridiculously awful behavior. And he has dethroned the Speaker of the House. So congratulations, Mr. Gaetz, on your success. I know he's been celebrating tonight, but I'll say to the American people, from what I hear, those charges, you have now followed someone, those 8 members of Congress, who has done awful things in private, and that's why the Ethics Committee is looking into him.
I should note that Matt Gaetz has denied that this has anything to do with the ethics investigation against him. But I will say, Frank, you've spoken to a panel of voters about how they view Congress right now. You are also someone who's worked in conservative politics for a long, long time. This is a fundamental structural problem with the Republican Party. What message do those voters have, do you have, for Republicans as they figure out a path forward here? Because the Matt Gaetzes of the world, maybe it's not Matt Gaetz, but the Matt Gaetzes of the world are not going away.
No, and it becomes impossible to govern, which is what the vast majority of the American people are asking for. It's 90%, and they may disagree on the details. They may disagree on the solutions, but they agree on the problem. And then you've got this 10% that just wants to burn it down and blow it up. And to me, the goal should be to get the partisanship out of the system and have people trying to get the job done. And frankly, the thing I'm also disappointed with is all these Democratic members of the Problem Solvers Caucus, not one of them voted with Kevin McCarthy. And I thought that there was a sincerity in the effort to work together, side by side, Problem Solvers Caucus, to get the job done. And the fact that they followed, that they did exactly 100% of the Democrats, tells me that we have a system in Washington that's completely broken, and that the people, they have every right to be mad at the politicians who represent them because they choose
maybe
politics over people.
maybe they didn't see Kevin McCarthy as part of the solution to the problem. Isn't that a
Well, I
possibility?
know what's coming next. As someone who knows on the inside, I know what's coming next. And if they didn't like Kevin McCarthy, they're not going to like the next step. And by the way, for those Republicans watching tonight, who's going to donate to your campaigns based on how you treat the will of the American people? Who's going to write a check going forward? And maybe that's a good thing. Get the money out of politics. But I'll tell you that tonight, the future of Congress has been sealed, and it is going to be a Democratic future. That Matt Gaetz and those 8 members will be responsible and will be held accountable for turning the House over to the Democrats. And, well, let what happens. But Frank, I do think that this is a tragedy.
Frank, I hear the emotion in your voice. You've been friends with Kevin McCarthy for quite some time, very close for all these years. We appreciate you coming on with us tonight.
Thank you.
Laura?